Joe, I was on your podcast twice before. It's glad to have you on the other side of town. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. Been really looking forward to another conversation with you, Ayush.
Likewise. One of the things that we had talked about on the two episodes we did on your podcast was masculinity. As soon as I say that word, we get a load of cultural baggage. That word has become corrupted, it has become sensationalized, it has become polarized, and for a lot of good and bad reasons. So let's start with a very broad question, which will kind of give us a foundation for this entire conversation. What is masculinity?
Yeah, so from my perspective, masculinity is the way that men in general behave to provide the maximum benefit to society. And I think it's important. Every word of that is important because, and we'll get into a lot of this as we talk further. There are absolutely problems with the way masculinity has been defined and practiced over the decades and centuries previously. I think there's a lot of problems with the way masculinity is viewed and defined now. But when you think about kind of like from an economics perspective, and my degree is in economics, I'm a very left brain guy, so I try to stay fact based and logical in my reasoning while still respecting like people are emotional. I'm an emotional person. You're an emotion. We have emotions. They shouldn't not factor into our decision making, but they shouldn't be the primary driver of our decision making. Um, but highest best use, right? So highest best use of men, highest best use of women. And this might be controversial to some people. I don't know why, but men and women are different. I hate to break it to everyone that is trying to pretend that they're not, but you're pretending. They're absolutely different, and there's verifiable scientific differences from height, weight, strength, hormones, organs, physical makeup, brain structure. Those are different in women and men. And I think we've kind of lost our way in society, and we have to get back to what is the highest and best use of men in practicing masculinity for the greater good. That's the way I think about it.
You say men and not males.
Yeah, let me think about that. I am not sure if there's a difference. Are you talking about when you say that, are you thinking age or are you thinking transgenderism?
Interesting. I was referring to transgenderism, but it's interesting for age. Like, we can go in both directions. I don't want to seem like
For
we're
yeah,
uncomfortable with either. Um, before we touch on those 2 points, I think they intersect in an interesting way. The immediate question that I have is what is your political stance? I know it. You're a libertarian at heart. But as soon as we bring up this topic of masculinity, you're immediate and the way that you talked about it, you're immediately thrown into traditional
sure.
conservatism, which doesn't make any sense to me. I can understand why people put you in that category, but to put you in that category does not make sense if that meta point is coming through. What is the link between politics and masculinity at this current moment that you found?
It's you're right. I think most people when they hear me share my opinions think I'm conservative, and I'm not conservative. And then if it's funny, if you knew me or could see me, like I'm a big guy. I'm 6'3", 220. Like I look like a knuckle dragging Neanderthal, beer guzzling, wife beating, Bible thumping white guy. That's what I look like that. Just the way I physically present myself to the world. So I get
Your podcast and your persona being salty ginger is not helping this.
it. Totally probably not doing myself any favors. Um, but yeah, I think that's right, and it feels to me like the majority of society, and I'm painting with a broad brush. Like I know, at least on my podcast, we get a lot of viewers from outside North America. So we have a lot of viewers in Europe. We have a lot of viewers in Southeast Asia, believe it or not. We've got a lot of viewers all over the world. And so when I'm talking about the society that I'm familiar with, it's pretty much North America, so US and Canada. And I'm in the US, you're in Canada. I think most people, when they hear masculinity, think conservatives support a return to like the 1950s TV father, and liberals, or what do we call conservatives? I'm just trying to whatever label people are used to hearing. I don't think about it the same way, but liberals is more of the kind of man bun, soy drinking, in touch with my feelings, stay at home father uh, form of masculinity. I don't think either of those are correct, but I think if we're stereotyping or generalizing, that's what immediately, if we're being honest with ourselves, that's what immediately pops into our heads when we say the word masculinity as it relates to the political spectrum.
And you mentioned that you don't think about these things in this way. So how do you think about them?
Yeah, so it's interesting. One of the things, and I expressed this to you in an email, you and I hit it off very quickly. You're clearly an intelligent guy, and I appreciate people who take thoughtful approaches. I want to surround myself with people that are good thinkers that don't think the same way I do. And it was obvious to me very quickly that you were one of those people. And so when I think about it, um, it's shades of gray. I'm 53 and I've been through some stuff in life. I've raised three boys, so my boys are all out in the world. They're men, and they own homes, and I've got one that's getting married, and et cetera, et cetera. I've got two of them that don't have girlfriends right now. They'd like girlfriends, but they don't have girlfriends right now. And I know the world's very different than when I was dating. I've been married to my wife for 32 years, so I've been off the market. Like you can't be more married than I am. Like I'm uber married. I'm uber married, happily so. By the way, that's not a complaint; it's a brag. Um, and so when I think about it, it is shades of gray. It's good that men are able to talk now about emotions and feelings, because when I was growing up, that was just not done. Like you were told to stifle it, you were told to toughen up, you were told to walk it off, you were told to man up. Like that was just a phrase, man up. It's time to man up. And I don't think that's healthy. I don't think that's good. I think to a certain extent there's a place for that though. Like we do need some of that, because when things are tough or things are hard, um it's generally men that run towards those things, and that has a lot to do with our brain structure and the hormones that we have in our bodies. And when you think about testosterone and you think about the way men's brains uh, kind of connect more front to back than left to right, when you do kind of a lot of research on brains, and like I like to try to understand why things are the way that they are. So I'm not a doctor. I didn't stay at Holiday Inn Express last night. I sell groceries for a living, and I run a podcast. So take that for what it's worth. I just want to get all the bona fides out of the way. I'm not a medical doctor in any way, shape, or form. However, I can read research, I can read, and I can comprehend. I'm not dumb. Um,
Because qualifications are the only reason why anybody can speak in this society, unfortunately.
right.
You need to be absolutely qualified, but they never tell you exactly what qualifications you need, only that you don't have the
Yeah,
qualifications.
all I can tell you is that I'm an economics major and I listen to millions of people say the dumbest shit ever about finances and economics and money. They're entitled to their opinions. I know they're wrong. Like inflation is not hard to figure out. Inflation is caused when there is more dollars chasing the same amount of goods or services. Welcome to inflation. Every time. That's the problem every single time. But getting back to what we're talking about here, um, I think there's shades of gray around that, but it's men that do the hard work. It just is. It's funny. I sent a video to my wife this morning of two female police officers trying to apprehend a drunk guy at a Hooters restaurant. And he was maybe 5'8", 140 pounds. And they actually had to have one of the male patrons at Hooters help them apprehend. He was just drunk. He wasn't threatening them. He wasn't pulling a weapon. He was laughing during the whole thing. But these two female women, or female cops who have been trained to apprehend people, literally couldn't get handcuffs on this guy. They couldn't even get him to the ground. And there's just physical differences. I'm up early and out the door every morning. I think it's very important to start your day by getting outside, and I do that every day. and I'll stop at the gas station to grab a drink or to grab something to eat on my way to where I'm going. And so I'm there between 5 and 6 a.m. every day. And it's usually pretty busy because a lot of people start their day pretty early. People that do paving, people that do landscaping, people that do construction work. It is rare for me to see a woman in any of those gas stations I stop at because they're not doing the trade, kind of hard work, strong back, calloused hand work that makes our society go. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I think it's foolish of us not to acknowledge that men like to do those jobs and women generally don't like to do those jobs. Men are pretty good at those jobs. Women generally aren't pretty good at those jobs. Does it mean women couldn't be good at those jobs? Not at all. But why would we force them to be good at a job when we've got plenty of people that want to do those jobs that are already good at them? I don't get it. But I also don't hear when I hear like women's rights advocates talk about representation, it's always in a boardroom, right? We want equal representation in the boardroom. Talk to me about equal representation digging ditches or laying bricks or pouring concrete, and then I'll listen to your argument. I don't think you want to be treated the same. I think you want unfair treatment. I think you want unfair consideration. So that's at least that's my take on it. That's the way I think about it.
Absolutely. And I want to touch on this aspect because I want to take the very broad arguments against what you're
Yep.
saying, and throw it back at you and just see what
Yep.
happens. So I'll save the question I want to ask you is, are you being misogynistic right now? But I'll save that there. I just want to lay that up for
Sure.
you. So right now we're in a moment, I think it's a hyper political moment, but we're just in a cultural political moment where masculinity is being debated, which we're doing right now. What is it about this current era? Because it's not just politics. We understand the political ideas around it. We understand how politics persuades people around it. But what do you think happened to make this the moment to talk about masculinity? Because we're talking about masculinity in the same time we're talking about AI, going to space, exploring more of the oceans, UFOs, all of these things, and somehow masculinity is also involved. What do you think the moment right now is?
So from my perspective, I can think of three things that come to mind when you ask me that question. The first one is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So this is a huge first world problem that we're debating here. And if you think about it from for whatever reason, Maslow's hierarchy of needs really resonated with me when I first learned about it. And I use it as a filter a lot when I think about things in the real world. And for those that aren't familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, Abraham Maslow was a psychologist and he developed a pyramid called the hierarchy of needs. And it's broad at the bottom, it's pyramid, broad at the bottom, small at the top. At the bottom are your most basic needs. And I mean, do I have oxygen? Do I have water? Is something trying to kill me right now? That's at the bottom. And as you satisfy those needs, you can move up the pyramid. It's what takes up your energy and your resources and your time. Once you're secure in the first layer, first rung, you move to the second rung, to the third rung. So when one of our biggest problems is should men or women be treated equally or differently or however you want to express it, that's a first world problem. That means you've got enough money. You know where your next meal is coming from. No one's trying to kill you right now. You've got somewhere to sleep tonight. In general, I understand there's people that don't fit all those categories. And, I live and work in cities where you can see that every day, where people are genuinely, they don't care about anything else because they're trying to figure out where dinner's coming from tonight. So I think of that as one of the reasons that we're able to have these conversations is we've got it pretty good to be able to have these conversations. Society is actually in a pretty good spot if this is a major issue. And it does feel like a major issue. A lot of people are thinking about it and talking about it. The second one is birth control. Before birth control, I think women had a lot less agency in their own lives and didn't matter if they did or did not want to get pregnant if they were interested in having sex. And let's be honest, all of us at some point in our life are interested in having sex, even those that choose not to, even those that like going to the clergy. That doesn't mean they don't have those desires, but it's rare for people to forego sexual activity at some point in their life. And whether you want it to be true or not, women are the only people that can bear children. and they bear a very heavy consequence of sexual activity when it does result in procreation, right? But then when women were able to have more control over when they got pregnant, if they wanted to get pregnant, that gave them a lot more options. And for what it's worth, let me just state unequivocally, I think that's a very good thing. That's not a bad thing in any way, shape, or form. I think it's good. But it changed the conversation and it changed the thought process because women could now think about those things and plan those things where before it was much more difficult to do so. And then I think about the women's liberation movement, which kind of started in the 60s, but really hit its stride in the 70s. And that's when this conversation really kind of took off, and it's never really quieted down since then. And I don't know, maybe it shouldn't quiet down. Maybe it's a good conversation to keep having until we get to a spot where everybody's comfortable. But I will say, I think they got some things wrong. Um, Not men and women are not equal, but that does not mean one is better or more important than the other. And I think, in my opinion, that's where a lot of people think about this incorrectly. Simply by saying men and women are not equal does not imply or expressly state that one has to be more valuable or important than the other, because I don't think that in any way, shape, or form. There are many aspects in the world and in my life where my wife is far superior to me on a particular subject, topic, handling a situation. I defer to her regularly in the areas of her expertise. And you could argue that that's because she's that way, not because she's a woman. I think those things are inextricably linked in her situation, or at least in our situation. Um, but the other thing is, it feels to me like women have diminished the single biggest gift and skill that they have, which is bearing and raising children. And there's literally nothing more important than bringing the next generation into the world and teaching them how to grow up to be productive, useful members of society. And I don't understand why women have diminished that so freely. Like they dismiss it like we're not the only ones that can do it. I don't know. Like, what if it was just men that was raising kids? I think our I think our world would be a train wreck if it was largely just men raising kids. I could tell you our house would have been spotless and meals would have been on time if I was at home, and our kids would still be in therapy right now. Right? Like from dealing with me as a parent, because I think I was a good father. I think I did my job as a father, but I don't hold a candle to my wife as a parent. I just don't. Um, and so I think that combination of things, and as we've kind of moved through and evolved as a society, that combination of things has led us to where we are now. And I don't think it's a bad conversation to have. I don't think it's bad at all. I just don't think a lot of people are, from my perspective, I don't think they're thinking about it intelligently or in a fact-based way. I think they're letting their emotions get the best of them.
See, what doesn't make sense to me, and thank you for bringing up those 3 points because I want to touch on all of those. What doesn't make sense to me is everything that you talked about doesn't have anything to do with directly masculinity. Like the birth control pill has no effect on masculinity. The women's liberation movement has no direct effect on masculinity. That's femininity. And with your wife, again, you speak about her very eloquently and very lovingly because you know that she has things, rightly so, that you just aren't able to have. Not because you are incapable, but maybe it is because you are incapable just as men of certain things. But that her having those things does not take away from you. But somehow in culture, the collective, whatever happened with femininity took away from masculinity. What is that kind of like? Are you familiar with Harry Potter? Like those demons that are sucking the soul. I forget what they call dementors, right? It's almost like that. What has happened with masculinity? Why have we allowed it to either degrade or be degraded?
Yeah, at least from my perspective, I think there were some very valid criticisms of the way that a small group of men behaved. And I don't know if small group of men is the right way to say it. I can say that I don't think most men are rapists. I don't think most men want to beat up on women, but there is a group of men that are those things. And we as a society largely allowed them to get away with it. The punishment for those behaviors, in my opinion, wasn't nearly as stringent as it should have been to try to dissuade those behaviors. With that said, we then kind of applied that thought process to, oh, you're a man too. That man acted this way. So all men must act this way. And I think that painting with a broad brush really disenfranchises a lot of men who want to do a better job of interacting with people, of developing relationships. Um, you know, right, wrong, or indifferent, I think it takes a lot of confidence as a man to be vulnerable. And I encourage men to do it with other men. And women might not like to hear this, but there's a large group of women who will look down on a man for being vulnerable. They just will. And I don't even necessarily think they're wrong for that, but it doesn't change the fact that they'll do it. And I think they're being disingenuous when they say, you can be vulnerable to me. And then their man comes to them and they, express concerns or fears or they cry. And it's like, oh, well, I don't know. That's really not manly. Right. Um, and there needs to be an outlet because men feel those things. Men aren't emotionless automatons that run cable and pour concrete and build houses and just fight wars and do all the things that men are known to do. There needs to be an outlet for that. I've always been fortunate that I participated in team athletics from a very young age. So I've always been around a group of like-minded guys. And it's interesting to me that just in the course of conversation, riding on a bus to a game, someone will start talking about religion and someone will start talking about relationships or someone will start talking about politics or whatever the case may be. And so you've got kind of this built-in support group that you can agree, you can disagree, but it's a forum. You've got a forum where you can bring those things or take those things. And I was fortunate to have that. If you don't have that as a man, I think that can be difficult. I think that can be hard. And then I tried to be that for my sons. But I was very explicit with them growing up. I told them at a very young age, as soon as I thought they were old enough to understand it, it's not my job to be your friend. It's my job to be your dad. Now, with that said, you can come to me for anything, like literally anything. I'm gonna love you no matter what. Doesn't mean I'm always gonna agree. Doesn't mean I'm always gonna tell you that you did a good job. In fact, it's the opposite. Because I love you, I will tell you the truth. And I think that the people that truly care about you will look you in the eye and tell you the truth. They'll do it in a way that tries to be constructive and tries to help you grow as a person, but they're not going to spit on your head and tell you it's raining. And I told all of them if I had to sign a contract right now that said you're going to hate me for the next 10 years, but you're going to grow up to be a good man, I'd sign that contract immediately. If I had a guarantee that you're going to grow up to be a good man because of my actions, I'd sign it. It's not my job to be popular. It's not my job to be your buddy. It's my job to teach you how to grow up to be a good man. And I think we've lost a lot of that in society. It's the primary reason I started my podcast. It started really trying to target young men, call it from anywhere from 15 to 35, that were kind of struggling to find their way. And I think there's a lot of voices out there that preach masculinity. They use the word masculinity, but what I hear them talk about is not masculinity, right? Banging a bunch of chicks is not masculinity. Being misogynistic, and I'm looking forward to our conversation on that word. That's not masculinity. But showing leadership and showing strength and providing an environment for those around you to feel better about themselves, I think to me, that's masculinity. That's what being a good man is. It raises everybody else up around you and they know they can count on you when the chips are down and the stakes are high. That's the way I think about it.
We've talked a lot about what masculinity is, and rightly so, because that's the entire fucking point of the conversation right now. But what we are going to get to is what masculinity is not, and then how misogyny plays in that, which I want to, again, you just brought it up, so let's get right to it. You're not being misogynistic, I don't think. I didn't hear you insult women, like women, capital
Yeah.
W. You didn't talk down from your perspective. And I think I can say from our perspective, you're just saying factual things. Men are biologically and physiologically stronger than women in general. I'm not saying I'm stronger than Amanda Nunes. I'm just saying in general,
Right.
right? She could kick my ass. Like I get it, no problem.
Exactly.
If I stepped in the cage with her, I'm not gonna look the same. Let's just say it like that. But in general, men are physically stronger than women. But immediately somebody is going to turn around and say, but that's misogynistic. Just with the way that you're saying it, because we're not sugarcoating it. We're not saying, oh, but that's okay, all of that. Just for some reason, when we're talking about humans and the differences between humans and the differences between, like, for example, if I were to say gorillas are stronger than dogs, nobody's going to be like, oh, you fucking hate dogs. Like, nobody would say that, right? It's just a factual thing.
Yes.
But for some reason, when we're talking about a gender or a sex, not to use those two terms interchangeably, but for some reason, when we're talking about a sex of a species, especially now, something happens in a weird way. I don't know if you've encountered being called misogynistic before, and if you have, I'd love to hear your response to it. But why is it that when we're talking about the differences between men and women choose to respond with "you're being misogynistic," and even some men respond with this as well?
Yeah. It's a great question. I'm not exactly sure how the word misogynistic, I don't know what the dictionary definition of the word misogynistic is. From my perspective, misogynistic would be treating women as less than men simply because they were women. Now, on an individual by individual basis, I think it's fine to call out, strengths and weaknesses and say, I'm better than you at this. And a large part of it is because I'm a man and you're a woman, or vice versa. You're better at this than me because you're a woman and I'm a man. I don't recall anyone ever calling me when I was growing up, the word was sexist. That was the word that was thrown around a lot. I think that's the equivalent for us Gen Xers. Sexist is the equivalent of misogynistic back in the day. I don't remember anyone ever saying that to me or calling me that. Um, I've never been accused of mansplaining, and I don't know, maybe there was people thinking it and just didn't say it to me. Not like I'm not certainly not trying to paint myself like I'm, on some altar, like I've been perfect my whole life, because that's just false. That would be absolutely false for me to make that claim. But I don't recall anyone ever saying that to me. I did have some advantages though. I grew up with three sisters. I had a good relationship and still have a good relationship with my mom. I had a lot of aunts that cared about me. So I interacted with a lot of women and a lot of different women. And I've always had a ton of respect for women and what they bring to the table. And I feel like I do a good job of demonstrating that. Now, with that said, I just think we've gotten too sensitive on some of these things. Like we should be able to have a conversation or tell a joke. Sometimes a joke is just a joke. And I feel like we've lost a lot of our ability to have uh what's the word I'm looking for? Good Lord, layered, call it layered conversations, right? Or conversations with some depth to them around subjects without letting emotion derail the conversation. And I think a lot of people lost their ability to laugh at themselves. I laugh at myself all the time. It's one of the things my wife and I do a lot is we've been together 32 years. So like there's no secret. So we know what we're good at and what we're not good at. We know when we're doing what we should be doing and not when we're not doing what we should be doing. And we've never had a problem with infidelity. We've always been very, very committed to each other from the first time we met. But there's times where you're working hard and there's times where you're being lazy. There's times where you're being attentive and there's times where you're not paying attention. And it's not hard for us to joke around about those things with each other. And the other one just owns it. Like if my wife says to me, you're being a jerk, I'm like, yeah, you're right. I am being a jerk. That's my bad. because I can be a jerk sometimes. Like, let's not kid around. It is what it is. And if you can't laugh at those things or own them when you're behaving that way, I think I think it makes you a lot more difficult to be with. But I think people have to push down their emotions and their visceral reactions to words in order to have more nuanced conversations and get to a better spot. It's the only way we're going to get to a better spot on this stuff. And I just feel like a lot of people have a hard time with that. And that's hard for me to understand because it's not my go-to is not to spout out the first thing that comes into my mind. My first thought is to take a breath and think about what you just heard and process it. And I don't think enough people do that.
Well, we'll get to that again. Well, let's talk about the sensitivity and the jokes. Because, I have a pretty diverse friend group. We have a Colombian, a Chinese person, a Greek guy, a black guy, a Quebecois guy. I'm Indian. And we don't really care about the jokes. Because if we're gonna say like there's a in brotherhood and with male friendships, um, there is a very core understanding of this is too far. You immediately know. And if you're doing that constantly, you just have no
Yeah.
respect. And that's very clear. But when you're chatting with your boys, if you don't make jokes, you don't necessarily care about them, right? And so making the jokes and having that like lack of sensitivity is love between men, I think. Um, Platonic love. But right now, we are seeing making jokes, and this is a really difficult point, so it'll take a little bit of time to tease everything out. But we're seeing making jokes as being immediate misogyny. And there's an understandable reason why. It's because of alpha male influencers, let's call them that. Because when someone like Andrew Tate comes online and just says women can't drive, he's making a joke, and I understand that. But there's also a lot of people that take that joke and apply it to actual reality and then like take it out of the context of the joke and just say women cannot drive. This is an absolute fact. And so there is a transformation between seeing something on TikTok for 30 seconds versus literally looking at a human and a human woman and saying you cannot drive because you are a woman. That you and I both agree is a misogynistic thing to do. What Andrew Tate is doing, I don't think is misogynistic unless he is actually trying to be misogynistic, just in the context of telling that joke. But trying to explain this entire pipeline to somebody, forget about it. Genuinely. And this is the problem I find is that we're in this moment of culture, and this works the other way with women, by the way. Women do the same thing too, and this is something we don't want to admit. But this is the problem I see with culture right now is we have all of these artifacts that we're dealing with that are not as serious. They're not as real as we're making them out to be. And yet they impede our world models. They impede our reality in a way where it's like, oh, Andrew Tate says that women should just stay in the kitchen. I just want a wife that stays in the kitchen. Like that pipeline is so fast and almost doesn't make any sense. Have you encountered this as well? And what are your thoughts on this atrocious pipeline?
Yeah, for sure. It's actually one of the things that I find concerning about society and folks your age, like folks my kids' age, right? My sons are right now 31, 28, and soon to be 26. And people are marrying much later. My wife and I were married at 21 and 19. Now that was even for our age, that was young. So we're way out on the tail on the bell curve for sure. And I'm not advocating. Look, if someone came to me and said, under the circumstances right now at 53, if someone came to me with the same set of circumstances under which my wife and I got married and told me they were going to get married, I would have reacted the same way everyone else did when we told them they were, are you fucking nuts? What are you doing? Like, absolutely. But we knew, like and again, we're outliers, got it. But they're marrying later, they're having less kids, there's less kind of pride in building and developing a family. And I'm speaking in generalities. I know there's still people out there that are outwardly and overtly looking for those things. But I think there's a lot more people that actually really want those things but are afraid to speak up because they're going to be judged based on that pipeline that you just talked about. And I think that's a really troubling thing for us as a society because look, the old barefoot and pregnant, yeah, it's funny and it's a joke. The way I think about it, and I think this applies to everybody regardless of gender, sex, whatever, however we're going to refer to the differences between men and women. Everybody wants to feel valued and everybody wants to feel accepted by the people that are important to them. That's it. Like at its core, that's what they want. And so, like, I look at the way my wife and I have our relationship set up. And let me throw a couple of caveats out there just because I know people have a tendency to get kind of off the rails and think about this in a different way. Same sex couples, 100% you've got my support. I'm totally with you. Marriage, legal rights, all of it. You should be exactly, if you want to marry someone, marry him. I'm good with it. I don't care who you sleep with. I don't care what you do while you sleep with them. Do your thing. Totally fine. My whole thing is I don't want to know about it. I don't know about your sex life. I don't want to talk to you about my sex life. Keep that between you and the people that you're being active with. Totally got it. I'm good with all of those things. Now,
I'll delete all my questions about your
yes,
sex life now. All right.
really. But
Gotcha.
but my wife and I have things that we both know we're good at. And our stuff fit together really well because the things that are really, really important to my wife, like she wants them a particular way, I don't care about them nearly as much as she does. So I'm fine doing them exactly her way. Totally good with it. We'll do it exactly your way because that's important to you. I want you to be happy. Awesome. And vice versa. The things that are really important to me, they're not that important to her. So we do them my way. But it's not, we don't keep tabs. There's not a written list somewhere. It's not 50-50. But we know that give and take that happens so that we wind up in the best spot possible as a couple, as a family, as a unit. And, I tell people a lot because I hear people argue and fight over really trivial things with their significant other, their spouse, their boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever. You got to think about it like it's you and them versus the problem, not you versus them. And I don't understand why it becomes adversarial so quickly. I think that's really troubling. But I think this pipeline and like you talked about, like you described, I think it feeds that thought process and it makes people concerned to stand up and say, "Hey, if I'm a woman, I don't want to go out in the corporate world and do all the bullshit that men seem to like to do. I don't want to work 60 hours a week. I don't want to miss birthday parties and family events. I want to have kids and I want to raise kids and I want someone to provide the income and take care of the house while I build a home and raise a family and I'm the CEO of the family." I think there's a lot of women that really want that and they're afraid to speak up and say that they want that because they're afraid of being judged.
Absolutely. But this is the thing. Some woman or some person is going to hear this and say, why do you think that a woman's only job is to have kids and build a home? What if she wants more?
Go for it. Yeah, look, here's the thing. This is the thing I fundamentally disagree with. I hear women say a lot, and I'm speaking in generalities again, but I've heard many women say, I want it all like men have it. Men have never had it all. That's absolutely a false statement and it's bullshit and it needs to be called out when it's made. I missed a ton of stuff and a ton of time with my kids because I was out providing the income we needed to raise our family. The trade-off for that was it freed up my wife to do the awesome work that she did. And I did not have it all. I did not have it all. I had to make choices. I had to make sacrifices. I had to miss things that I did not want to miss. And if women want the same thing in the corporate world, they're going to have to make those same choices. I don't think in the corporate world you should get special consideration because you're a mother. I think that's bullshit. Like if you want to do the job, do the job. If you don't, don't. And it's the same for men. Like you shouldn't get special consideration. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't make exceptions because your kid's got to play at 3 o'clock and you want to get out to see it. If you've got a high performer and they're busting their ass and they usually work 60 hours a week, you're a terrible leader and a terrible manager if you say no to that request. However, if that request comes when you're trying to land a $3 billion client and you're 2 days out from the closing, hey, I don't know what to tell you. That's the job. Like there's situations where you have to make choices, and those situations are rare, but they still exist. But men have never had it all. And we need to stop saying that men have it all, women want it all like men. Men don't have it all. Men have never had it all.
I'm gonna go just a step out of my depth because again, this conversation that I'm having right now is just a conversation with you because you and I hit it off when we riff really well with each other, but I don't study this. I don't think you study this. The actual interest in it is very surface level. There's no like deep, deep, deep points. Not that we're not making deep points, but there's no deep incentive to make a certain point. But I do want to say, because I keep on hearing this thing about the patriarchy. And I don't necessarily know exactly when it's used, but I know that it is used in the context of this entire meta conversation. So when we're talking about women in corporate roles and you're saying that, well, do the job, you shouldn't get exceptions because you're a mother or whatever, like there's a job to do. Isn't that also an aspect of the patriarchy making it so that it benefits men more than women?
Maybe. I think about it when I look at where we're at as a society. Um, when you look at the innovation that's driven a lot of things in the world, a lot of it's almost all of it's come from Western culture. And Western culture was developed in a way that, again, highest and best use, right? So again, it's clearly and just to be clear, my thought process and views are absolutely tainted by my education and my experiences. So I am not ambivalent on this, and I am not unconflicted on this in any way. So let me just make that statement and acknowledge it right up front. But do we want the best for our society? And you can make the argument that wouldn't the best for our society to be have the flexibility to do both? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Would we have developed space travel if men had said, "Hey, I got to get to my kid's little league game," instead of staying at NASA and working the numbers so that we could launch people into space and launch satellites and create cell phones and all the things that have come from that? Would we have that if Jonas Salk had said, "You know what? I got to get to that play, so I guess I'll work on the polio vaccine tomorrow." Like there's situations where that's just what's called for. And I don't look at it like it's gender driven. I guess there's an argument to be made that it could be gender driven. And yes, men were in charge when the whole thing was set up. There's no two ways about it. That's 100% correct. Um, and again, back then, men were in charge because there was a lot of things in the world that could kill you, and men were better at dealing with those things than women generally. Again, that doesn't mean women couldn't do it. Harriet Tubman was a fierce warrior for equality and freeing slaves, and she was a tough lady. You wouldn't have fucked with Harriet Tubman back in the day. I'm not saying that there's not women out there that can't do those things. I'm saying, as a general rule, men are a lot better at those things than women in general.
We're at a state in society right now where we're not making more of ourselves for replacement rates to keep our species at the replacement rate. And if our population is dwindling, then we are literally committing self-genocide, like species
Yeah.
said. And so an argument can be made that the highest purpose of a species is to make more of itself. And we need to restructure culture and society to fit that paradigm. And the way that we've been going about it, it seems that we've become so much more individualistic rather than focusing on the collective. Where do you think we should step to start refocusing on the collective? And I want to really target the two sides of this coin. We're talking about masculinity right now, but let's set that aside for a second. What do women need to understand about this current moment? If you could speak to the broad generalization of the collective women on Earth, what does femininity need to do to update or upgrade? Actually, upgrade is a little bit of a term. Let's just say update or reformat to best serve the species right now?
Yeah, to me, that goes back to the fundamental fact that right now there's what, 9 billion people, around 9 billion people on the face of the earth. Every single one of them was birthed by a woman. Like there's no other way to do it. I guess you could, I don't know, maybe there's another test tube baby out there that like I haven't, I haven't heard about, but let's just leave that statistical anomaly off to the side. If we're going to propagate as a species, it's men inseminating women and women carrying babies to term and delivering them. And then someone needs to raise those people with the values and with the empathy and with the intelligence to grow up to be productive members of the society that we build. I would argue that women are much better positioned and much more naturally inclined to do a better job of the second part than men are on their own. And I would just ask them to think through that and think about if 70 years from now on your deathbed, you're going to look back and say, I'm really glad I've got all these career accomplishments. If that would outweigh, I'm really glad I left 4 children and 12 grandchildren and uh, 13 nieces and nephews. And I've left such a legacy, and I was the matriarch of all of that. All of that came from me and the actions I took and the people whose lives I touched. I don't see much of an argument there. Like, I just don't. But I'm not a woman. I'm not female. So I'm not maybe the best person to say that, but I don't think anything I just said is wrong. And I think if women are honest with themselves, the majority of them would share those feelings.
And the same question for masculinity. What do we, and by we, I mean people who are not in their most masculine frame of mind, and caveat, not caveat, but most importantly, but want to be in their most masculine frame of mind. What do they need to understand about masculinity right now?
Yep. So to me, the number one component of masculinity is confidence. And confidence is developed through repetition. You don't gain confidence by reading. You don't gain confidence by watching videos. You don't gain confidence by taking courses. You take confidence by doing things over and over and over again, trying, failing, trying again with the learnings that you got, failing again, keep trying until you get it right. And when a man in a leadership position, and I look at fatherhood, husbandry as leadership positions for sure. When a man can give the others, when a man has confidence in himself, that is going to permeate the others around them and give them the confidence to be a good mother, to be a good wife, to be a good, if you want to go to work and not have a family, you're still going to make your wife a better person and have more confidence knowing they've got someone to support them and lean on them. So for men, I would argue that we need to get our confidence back and we need to stand for what we believe in. And if what you believe in any way involves denigrating other people or making other people feel less than so you can feel better about yourself, you're wrong. You're doing it wrong. Your thought process is not correct. And there's something inside of you that you need to work on and fix. Goes back to confidence, I would argue, all the time. You don't have confidence in something about yourself, whether it's the way you look, whether it's the way you interact with other people, whether it's the way you present yourself to the world. There's something lacking there. And it's incumbent on us as men to work on ourselves, to get better at those things, to develop our own self confidence so that we can help the other people around us with their self confidence. At least that's the way I think about it. That's why I view my role as a man.
I love it. I don't want to end it here. I want to talk about something that we had touched on in our first conversation together when we were still figuring each other out. We were talking about toxic masculinity versus healthy masculinity. And the context was the breakup I was going through at the time because it was much fresher at that point. And we were talking about in the context of you actually meeting your wife, and we were discussing when for healthy friends to get you out of it, when you should allow the space for your friend to feel the emotion, and then at some point say, "Dude, let's go out, let's go meet some people." Again, we're not saying having sex with a lot of people is the answer. We're not saying that not feeling the emotions is the answer. We're also not saying that feeling the emotions to an extent where you're just drowned in them is the answer. But there is a happy middle there. And we explored something really interesting, and I want to not commentate on it, but allow you to say your piece. But what did we explore in that balance of healthy masculinity?
Yeah. If I remember our conversation correctly, we I brought up how I met my wife, and then you brought up that you'd recently been through the end of a relationship. And so just for the way I met my wife, I had been dating a girl for 3 years, long distance for the last 2 years. And the night before I went back to the town I was originally from, where she lived, she called me and dumped me. And so I was feeling sorry for myself and blah, blah, blah. And 2 days later, I had a couple of friends call me and say, "Hey, enough. Time to get out back in the real world." I met my wife that night. So, not what you would expect at all. But that's exactly what happened. And there was a little bit of back and forth between us about the appropriate amount of time or the right approach by your friend group when it's time to intervene, when someone needs, some help. And it's funny, one of my one of my favorite sayings is the difference between a pat on the back and a kick in the ass is about 18 inches. And it's it's difficult sometimes to know which is going to be effective. And like you talked about, it's I always find it funny that like when women say they're best friends, they can be really catty towards each other and then not talk to each other for 5 years. When men are best friends, we are absolute pricks to each other on purpose. And your buddy would lay down in front of a truck for you if you called him. You could call him at 2:30 and go, "Hey, grab 2 shovels and some hefty bags. We got to go get rid of something. I'm not going to tell you what." He'd be at your house in 10 minutes. Like, like, you know, that's how it would work. So, like, it feels like if your friends are really your friends, they'll give you some space to talk, they'll give you some space to express your emotions and what you're feeling. And then at some point, and this is the hard part, right? At some point, they're going to say, "Hey, got it. That's enough. It's time to get on with your life." For me, it was 2 days, and that's okay. And for other people, it might be longer. I don't know. Like so this gal that I was dating called me and broke up with me. I wanted to have a conversation. I wasn't willing to do that over the phone after 3 years. And so she came over and picked me up, and we drove up to a park, and we had a conversation. I realized she was serious. She was right, by the way. She's 100% right to end the relationship. It had run its course. And she's a great girl. I hold zero against her. She's had a great life, and I'm very happy that she has. I have zero bad things to say about her. Um, but at that moment, I realized, hey, this is over, and she doesn't want anything to do with me. And I'm not going to be treated like I don't want sympathy or pity. I literally got out of the car and walked home. And she's like, "I'll give you a ride." I said, "I don't want to ride. I don't want to ride. I'm fine." And I walked home. Um, so like I've always been good at turning the page. That's why I was a closer in baseball. When when things don't go well, it sucks, but it's like you got to go again the next day. That's just how it works. Um, but some people take longer to get through that. One of my sons takes a lot longer to get through those situations, and he can be difficult for me to relate to because there are times where I want to grab him. And this is why my wife is who she is. She manages it because if it was up to me, I'd grab him by the shirt and go, "Hey, time to toughen up a little bit and get back out and take some more lumps." And that's not what he needs. That would be bad of me to do that. So this is one of those situations where I defer to my wife because she is infinitely better at reading those situations, and she delivers infinitely better outcomes than I would deliver. That's where the magic happens between men and women when you're able to maximize each of your strengths so that you as a couple and as a family wind up, it's got a multiplier effect on everybody around you. And I'm at the stage of my life now where we are kind of the penultimate family and couple in the family, even though there's older family members that are still around and et cetera, et cetera. We are kind of the go-to for most of the people in our world. And it's because people recognize 30 plus years of stability, 30 plus years of happiness, 30 plus years of working together to help the other people around us enjoy the same things that we enjoy as a couple. And I mean enjoy like to experience, the happiness and the camaraderie and the love and the community and knowing that there's always people out there that are going to love you and think about you and have your back regardless of what happens. And that's a hard place for men to figure out. Like it's not the easiest thing in the world to do.
I 100% agree. 100% agree with all of this. And I resonate very, very heavily with your son because and one thing I really do appreciate is when we were setting up one of I think the second podcast, we were just finishing the second podcast. You had sent me an email and you said in the call, don't worry about it. You're a great guy and you're gonna find the person. Just keep your head up, something along those lines. And I really did appreciate that. So I want to personally thank you for that message. You didn't have to send that, but you felt it was necessary because we're bros, and I appreciate that. Um, I think a couple of days before that, I say again, still in the feelings, still feeling everything, talking about it a lot, writing a lot, just going through the motions. And I was calling my friend, and he was relating to me about how, are you familiar with
Oh
Layla
yeah,
or
sure.
Alex Harmozy? Yeah. So Layla Harmozy was saying that she had been in a relationship before Alex, and she was really heartbroken, and she was talking about it with her therapist, and her therapist turned around and said, "Okay, sounds like you're about to be over it. You don't need to drag it out. Maybe let's pick Thursday to be over it. Like, what do you say about that? Let's just pick Thursday. Let's just get over it, you know?" And she was like, I didn't even know that that was possible. And and this is the thing is when you have a more active rather than passive lifestyle or mindset,
Mm.
you can choose these things. You can choose to be sad. Like sadness, I understand. We're feeling grief, we lost our love or whatever. But there is an aspect of choosing to stay sad. There's an aspect of choosing to stay down. And one of the core things about healthy masculinity, and one of the beautiful parts of healthy masculinity, is saying to your brothers, to your fellow men and males, "Hey, we're there for you. We can see your potential. Let's go." If they respond, "I need a little bit more time," okay, no problem.
Mm.
But you're still there for them. You're still active with them. And one of the other things that we talked about on your podcast is the Joe Rogan episode with John Bernthal, the actor, and he was talking about how he was a piece of shit when he was younger, and he had really wished that he had a support group. And one of the things that you and I were talking about is how to get a support group for males, but young males in general. I fucked up a lot when I was 16. I'm sure you had your fair share of mess ups. It's a commonality. However, the difference is we were able to escape that, whereas a lot of
Mm.
young males continue that. There's a great quote by Benjamin Franklin where some people die at 25, they don't
Yes.
get buried until 75. I think that some people stay with their unhealthy masculinity for so long, and then those are the people that everybody talks about as general men, the rapists, the beaters, the Harvey Weinsteins, etc. The point I'm getting to is how should we establish that group for young men? What does that look like? What would be the benefits of that group? It's not like some Andrew Tate red pill shit where we're just saying, fuck women and all of that. It's not even talking about women in any case, unless the woman is the problem, where the woman is the person to talk about. It's talking about men for the sake of men. What does that look
Yeah.
like?
So I think there's a couple of different approaches. Like I had talked earlier in this conversation about being fortunate to be involved in team athletics. So I was always around a group of guys that had similar interests. And I think that's where you're going to find the people that you can be with and interact with is where do you have similar interests? Like you're a really bright guy. You read a lot, you write a lot, you've got your podcast. Um, other people have similar interests. Like those are people, and I know you've already got a big group of friends. So I know this isn't specific to you. I'm just using you as an example. If you're a man and you feel like there's nobody else out there that's thinking what you're thinking or feeling what you're feeling, find other people that like things that you like. Maybe you like to fish. Maybe you like to hike. Maybe you like a particular sports team. Maybe you like to windsurf. I don't know what it is. I golf a lot, and you can substitute any sport. I used to when I was younger, and my body could take it, and I was in better shape. I played a lot of pickup basketball, and I lived a lot of different places. But pickup basketball is universal. You can literally show up at a park where there's games running, and you can shoot your way onto a team and playing games with guys you've never, literally never met before. Just make your free throw, and you're running on the next one, right? And it's universal, those situations. Everybody knows the offense calls fouls. Everybody knows you got to win by two. There are universal situations. Golf is one of those universal situations. I'm a pretty good golfer. Like anytime you have to hit a ball with a stick, there's a sport that involves hitting a ball with a stick, I'm generally pretty good at it. I could care less if I'm playing with someone that's terrible. They love to be out on the course and they love the experience of golfing. I'm in. I could care less if they're hacking it up. I have a good time with a lot of different people on a golf course. And you just wind up with random people that you've literally never met before in your life. I think putting yourself in those situations over, like we talked about, repetitions, right? Repetitions build confidence. Put yourself in those situations over and over and over again. If you're a sports fan and you're going to watch the game in whatever sport it is at your house, why not go to a sports bar? Why not go to a sports bar and sit at the bar and strike up conversations with people? You absolutely never know where that's going to lead to. If you're really into books, why not go to a library and read books? You might meet people at the library that you can talk to. With I'm not a huge proponent of social media, but I think there are some big advantages of social media. One of them we're doing right now, right? We wouldn't know each other if it wasn't for podcasting. And my life's better knowing you. Like just having you in my life makes it
Likewise.
better. You can do the same thing on Facebook. If you don't have, if there's not a group for your thing, start one. Like other people will join, they'll do it. You might think it's very, I'm going to go a little bit off the rails here, but I jokingly told my wife that she should start making foot fetish videos. I'm like, we could use a little extra cash. What do you think about, like nobody can see your face. It's really not porn. It's really not, joking, joking.
I would have loved to be a fly on the wall for that
He's
conversation.
like, those are grounds for
That's
divorce. I'm like,
incredible.
yeah, I think you're right. I think that's fair. I'll leave it alone for now. I'm just saying. But then she
For
said,
now.
are there really people out there that are into feet? I said, oh yeah, like you name it. There is a group out there that has a fetish about it. Pregnant women, yep. There's dudes out there that get off on pregnant women. Lactating women, yep. There's dudes out there that get off on lactating women. Non-judgmental, by the way. I'm not judging anybody for whatever your proclivities are. My point here is, I'm bringing it back all the way around to our conversation. Doesn't matter what you're interested in. There are other people out there interested in the same things. You, as a man, as a leader, might have to take the first step to initiate those relationships and interactions. And it's never been easier to do it than it is right now. You can do it, but start an Instagram page and say, I like X, whatever X is. Who else likes X? Someone else out there will find you. Some other group of people out there will find you. And that can lead to places, really good places. But you, again, going back to it, I think men have to be leaders. I think men have to show confidence. And being a leader and showing confidence also means taking the first step and being vulnerable. It's one of the things that really bothers me about young men today is they've kind of given up on approaching women in a lot of instances. And I get it. Like I didn't have to worry about being rejected publicly on the internet when I was dating. Like it didn't exist. The internet wasn't a thing.
Right.
So like when someone, I always took a different approach though. Uh, I'm not a drinker. I've never been drunk in my life. I've never touched an illegal drug in my life. Those just are not my things. I'm actually not against them. They're just not for me. But I got invited to everything because I drove everybody everywhere. So I was, I was safe transportation. So I got literally invited to everything. And I really did not like the environments at bars, but I went because, taking care of my buddies. And there was a girl at the bar. She was, I mean, gorgeous, like drop dead gorgeous. And she was a total bitch. She was just rejecting everybody left and right. And I'm like, you guys are taking the wrong approach here.
Yeah.
So they're like, what you think you could get her number? I said, I don't know, but I'll tell you what I would do. And I went over and I said, hey, can I buy you a drink? And she like looked me up and down like, no. I said, so like blowjob, totally out of the question then. And she was so pissed. I'm like, fuck you. Who do you think you are treating everybody this way? Like nobody's good looking enough to tolerate this behavior. Get the stick out of your ass or get out of here. And
Mhm.
she demonstrably changed her behavior. I wasn't interested in her, by the way, because don't get me wrong, I
Right.
love good looking women. My wife is very, very attractive, but that's not why I'm with her. She's 1,000 times a better person than she is physically attractive. I love that she's both. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to be a hypocrite. I love that she's both. But if you can't get that total package, someone that you're both physically attracted to and someone that you just really, really connect with, it's not worth it, man. I call it the fuck yeah test. If someone says do you like him and you don't say fuck yeah, the answer is no.
Yeah.
Yep, it's no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's a great
So
way to put it.
that's sorry,
That's a
sorry for my
great way to
long-winded
put it.
diatribe there. That's what I
No, please no. I love it. Because right now, and this is kind of bringing everything full circle. And this is something again, as we said on your podcast. Not that we're rehashing a lot of this, but it's interesting how they overlap in some way. But a lot of my generation needs to just shut the fuck up and just listen to older folks. I think that. Not that we're going to blindly follow in your generation's footsteps. I don't even think your generation wants that. However, there are things that worked because that's just how the generations function. There are things that didn't work. Let's talk about the things that didn't work, 100%. 100% let's talk about the things that didn't work. But for us to throw away the entire playbook and write it from scratch doesn't really make any sense. It's like every year, this is probably a bad analogy, but every year they don't just like recreate the iPhone. They're using the same thing, just iterating on it, right? And so when we're listening to folks in your generation and generation above you and the generation, maybe not the generation below you, no offense, millennials, but whatever. Um, I don't know if you've got this age advice yet, but to each their own. Um, but when we're listening to older generations, I really want my generation to start understanding that listening, just using active listening skills, is an okay thing to do. And having a conversation, and the really masculine thing, I guess, is saying, "Hey, I disagree with this part. Can we talk about it? Like, let's discuss it. Where are you coming from? Because you're also operating in a world that worked for those algorithms, those mental algorithms that you're running. Like when you're looking at books published 20 years ago, you don't just say, "Oh, how the fuck are they not thinking about the iPhone right now? The iPhone didn't exist 20 years ago. How could they have been thinking about it or writing about it, right?" And so when we're looking at past generations and we're thinking about like how they fucked up the world or whatever, it's like, yes, but they were working with the information they had at that moment. I want to come to like a nice bow for the conversation. What is your advice to young men right now? And what is, most importantly, what is your anti-advice to young men right now? What are you going, like three things either way. What are you going to tell young men? Don't fucking do this. Just don't. And be as abrasive, as direct as you want. And the three things that you're going to tell young men, absolutely do these things. You don't have to sugarcoat them, not that you are, but again, like I want to get to a place where we can just have these conversations and people can just listen to it and not worry about the
Sure.
explanations. What are
Yeah,
those
let's
things?
start with the things that I think they should do. Number one is find someone to spend your life with. Like you will not find anything better or more rewarding than a spouse that you care about more than yourself. And it's one of the things
Mhm.
my wife, values about me and loves about me. She knows that if we were ever in a situation where our physical safety was at risk, I would, if at all possible, fight the people off long enough for her to get away and or throw myself in front of
Yes.
bullets for her. She also knows that if someone was going to hurt her, I would fucking kill them before they could. Like, you want that kind of a relationship. There's nothing more valuable in the world than that relationship. Number two is take pride in everything you do. I don't care what it is. If you are a janitor, then you should be the best fucking janitor that you could be. There is a lot to be said for good old fashioned male pride. And your life will wind up in a really good spot if you take that pride in everything you do. The third thing would be treat other people respectfully. So notice I didn't say nicely because not everyone deserves to be treated nicely. But when you do handle those situations, you can do it in a respectful way. And that's what I try to do. I've inserted myself in many situations where someone was pushing someone around or someone was picking on someone. I got my ass kicked in eighth grade because I went to school with a kid that had Down syndrome, and some older kids were picking on him. And I'm like, "What's the matter with you? Like, he has Down syndrome. What's the matter with you?" Like, "Oh, you sticking up for him?" I said, "Yeah, I'm sticking up for him." So they kicked my ass. That was better than letting them do it to him.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? I think that's part of being a
Right.
man is standing up for things that are wrong, regardless of the consequences sometimes. But you can always be respectful to people. So find someone to share your life with, take pride in everything you do, and be respectful to people because that will follow you forever. People will think highly of you if you do those three things. Um, the things I would encourage you not to do, don't listen to society. Like, I think society is fucked up. There is so much noise. You should have your convictions. I'm not saying don't take in as much information as possible and question yourself and question your decisions to make sure you're making good decisions. That's not what I'm saying at all. But don't let society dictate how you're going to interact with the world. Like, one of my favorite sayings is reasonable men conform to the way things are. Unreasonable men force things to change to conform with the way they want them. Therefore, all progress in the world is made by unreasonable men. And you can be unreasonable without being disagreeable. You don't have to be disagreeable all the time. There's times where it's necessary. Like, there's times where that it's your job to stand up and say, "Nah, not on my watch. Not going to happen." Um, so don't let society dictate those things to you. Um, Number two is don't try to make yourself feel better or build your confidence at someone else's expense. And that, to me, that's different than respect. You, if you're tough, go fight someone bigger and stronger than you. That will prove to me that you're tough. If you are laying hands on somebody that's weaker than you, if you are laying hands on someone that can't defend themselves, I don't have any respect for you. The world's not going to have any respect for you. Treat people both respectfully and don't pick on people to make yourself feel better. Like, you're better than that. And then the third one is don't think that confidence and masculinity means you have to eat your feelings. Find a healthy way
Right.
to express those feelings. I would encourage you strongly as a man to find other men to do it with. Because, like we talked about earlier, I don't even think women are wrong for this, but there's a lot of women who will see that behavior and think less of you as a man. Again, I don't even think that's wrong. Once you're in a relationship with someone and they know what you're really all about, like, you can let it all hang out at that point. It's a lot less important once you've kind of gone through the baptism by fire and proved yourself in certain situations. But don't try to fight through all this stuff on your own. Find other outlets for it. And again, I would encourage you to do that with other men. And we talked about some ways that I think you can do that in finding people who have commonalities with you that will naturally lead you into other conversations and other areas and aspects of life. And I think that's terribly, terribly important. So that's my three up and three down.
Love it. And just for that last point, can you mention the men do better with shoulder to shoulder, whereas
Yeah,
women
for
do better
sure.
with
So
eye
this is
contact?
like I used to said, this is my own personal theory. I don't think it's wrong. I've interacted with literally thousands, if not tens of thousands of people in my 53 years. And on the subject you had talked about in terms of listening to older generations, I can tell you right now, I'm a very well-traveled 53. When there's a 70-year-old that's talking to me or saying something to me, I shut the fuck up and I listen to them unabashedly. They've got almost 20 years more of life experience than me. I might totally agree with everything they say and take it all to heart. I might listen to it and say, none of that makes any sense to me. And I'm just going to compartmentalize it and move forward. But at least I've got the information. There's so much value in listening to what people who have more life experience than you have learned through that life experience. And they're downloading it to you for free if you'll just listen to it. So, men and women relate to each other in much different ways, at least in my observation and experience. Women prefer to sit face to face and kind of read the whole situation. They want to make eye contact. They want to see your body language. They want to see the muscles in your face. Like they are detail oriented. They miss nothing. It's really impressive when you think about it. By the way, these are not knocks. This is actually a compliment towards women. However, men are not comfortable being in those situations. Men relate much better in less formal situations. So I call them shoulder to shoulder situations. Sitting at a bar, talking to each other on bar stools, riding in a car, sitting shoulder to shoulder while you're on a road trip, watching a game together, sitting on a couch, shoulder to shoulder, riding in a golf cart. I take a lot of people golfing because it's such a relaxed environment and they're so comfortable talking. So I absolutely, like I used to said, I encourage men when you're in person and communicating with other men, find situations by which you can be shoulder to shoulder. Fuck, take a walk. Walking, you're going to be shoulder to shoulder. But standing and looking at each other, that's a more formal way of communicating. And it's going to be harder for some men to let their guard down and be real and honest with you when you're in those situations. I golf with all my sons, just sitting in a golf cart. They'll talk to me differently when we're sitting next to each other. It doesn't feel like father and son. It feels like two guys golfing. And you know, they'll talk about things and say things that they wouldn't say in different circumstances. So that's my theory. And by the way, the reverse is true. So when you're trying to relate to a woman, for goodness sakes, try to get in front of her. Try to get in front of her and look her in the eye. It's going to give you a
Mhm.
much better chance. And stop sending pictures of your junk to people. Quit doing it. Nobody wants them. Even if she says she wants them,
Disclaimer.
she's lying.
Nobody wants. She's lying. Especially, oh my God, the unsolicited dick pics. I've never understood that about masculine, about male culture. I will never understand that. Joe, a couple more questions for you. Thank you so much for being this deep and being this person. You know, it's very rare that somebody can speak as eloquently as you on these kinds of things and be still grounded. You haven't said anything really controversial. And that's rare that we're talking about a very controversial topic, but you're not being controversial. That says something about where we can be as a society. If you had a magic wand and you could solve one problem in the world, what would it be and why?
Um, if I could solve one problem in the world, it would likely be childhood illness. And again, this goes back to part of our earlier conversation. I think I've always looked at my role as a man to protect and elevate and to be able to help children grow up to realize their full potential. Like, I don't think there's a higher or better use for any of us. So it would be to end childhood illness. And that's why, like, everyone should get a shot to live their life um, completely. That's the way I think about it.
What gives you hope in the world?
People. Believe it or not, that's so. It's individuals are actually really intelligent, and individuals are actually really interesting. When you talk about groups of people, it degenerates quickly, right? And that's groupthink. That's why you see a bunch of people videotaping someone drowning instead of someone jumping in and saving them. Because when you get a group of people together, there's been lots of studies done on this, and nobody wants to take the first step. That's why I say, as a man, your job is to jump in the water and go help. Put your fucking phone down and go help that person that needs help. But when you interact with people, and I interact with tons of people because I work in a business where we have thousands of people come through our stores every day. I interact with politicians. I interact with business leaders. I interact with everyday human beings. And people want good things. Try to keep that in the front of your mind. It's rare to come across someone who actually wants bad things for other people. They want other people to be happy. They want other people to be successful. They have a hard time expressing it sometimes. And sometimes you catch them on a bad day or after something bad has happened to them or in a bad spot in their life. And they might not be thinking the most positive way. But people are awesome. It's people that have developed all these things that we experience every day and see around us. And if we can that's the part that concerns me about technology is I think that's one of the reasons why people are so comfortable like celebrating Charlie Kirk's death. Like, I don't think those people at their core are bad people. I think they're like their circuits are crossed right now and they're not thinking clearly. I feel like a lot of that has to do with our interactions with technology on such a regular basis. But if we can get people to relate to each other at a human level, I think like literally the sky. I was going to say the sky's the limit, but it's not. Like when you look at what Elon Musk is doing right now in terms of exploring life or habitating other planets, like the sky's not even the limit. Like there's people like Elon Musk. You can think what you want. I know he's got 13 kids with 10 women and all the other jazz. Like, but there's something to be said for that guy just going after what he believes in. That's why there's a lot of people that follow and respect that guy. But yeah, people. I think people are it. Like it's pretty awesome when you get to know people.
I love it. Joe, thank you so much for being a part of this program and being a part of my life. It's very rare but very fun when you just meet a fellow human and you click, especially when they're a part of a different generation. And it's really great that we've had three amazing multi-hour conversations over the last month and a half. That's a very special thing for me. Where can we find you online?
Yeah, so we've got a website, saltygingertalk.com. We've got a YouTube channel, which is just at Salty Ginger Talk. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. The YouTube channel is our primary mode of communication, and it's the same content. Like we don't do anything different. It's the same content over and over again. And all we're trying to do is encourage people to live a meaningful, purposeful life. And the way we do that is by having conversations like this with a wide variety of people. So you can see interviews on our podcast from people that have survived sexual abuse as children, incest as children, people who have lost children, people who are business leaders and have built and lost businesses, people who have built and sold businesses, people who are natural healers, people who are psychologists, wide variety of people, because you don't know what resonates with somebody. It's not my place to judge anybody, and it's not my place to tell you what should be important to you or how you should go after it. I just know you need to find what's important to you and that you have to go after it if you want to live a great life. And that's all we try to do on the podcast. So for anyone that's interested, saltygingertalk.com, go to YouTube. You can subscribe there and just check out all our episodes. It's all free. I'm not selling a course. I'm not selling a book. I got nothing against courses or books. That's just not why we do what we do. So
I
and
love it.
yeah, let me just thank you so much, Ayush. I agree. So on its surface, when you look at the two of us and you lay us out on a table, it doesn't make sense that we clicked the way that we did, but I'm appreciative that we did. And like I said, my life is better having you in it and having you to communicate with and having you as a friend. So I really appreciate all the time that we've spent together the last month and a half as well. It's very meaningful to me.
Until next time, brother.
All right.
Thank you.
Sounds good.